everyone, it's Trish here from Techniques by Trish, and I realize it has been ridiculously long since I've posted a video, but I'm hoping to create a life update video at some point in time to give you guys a heads up as to what's been going on. But this was a card I created for Valentine's Day, and it is now after Valentine's Day. So it is a renamed love card, but it has this geometric heart that I have been obsessing about. I just needed to put it on paper. It's a heart that was used in a Paper Smooches Sparks challenge a couple of years ago, and I happened to come across it again on the internet, and I decided that I needed to somehow recreate it to contain my sanity. So I am using the Simon Says Stamp Perfect Shapes stamp set, and I'm pairing that with some of the Tim Holtz watercolor paper that you see off to the right hand side. And I just received this stamp set, and what a great way to use it but to mutilate one of the stamps by cutting it in half. I promise the reasoning behind it is great. You can always put them back together and reuse them, so no worries. But I have cut that that square in half to create a triangle so that I can create the perfect triangle to stamp out my geometric heart. So on my watercolor paper, you'll see that I've kind of marked off some lines. What I've done is very badly marked down the center of the watercolor paper halfway, and then I've given myself roughly 1-inch guidelines just to make my heart look not totally crooked or lopsided. So I'm taking the Tim Holtz Distress ink in tea dye, and I could have gone with the antique linens, which would have been a little bit lighter, but I figured I'd go a little bit darker so that I could see exactly where I've stamped so that I don't have any real issues. I apologize for my head being in the way, but I did want to show you guys at least one of the sides of the heart exactly how I did it step by step without cutting anything out so that you understand the method behind this very, very crazy madness. Now you'll see here that there's some full squares, and I could have kept my square contained and not cut it in half, but I really wanted to make that perfect triangle, so I did cut it half ahead of time. So now that I've stamped one side, I went ahead and used my T-square ruler and a pencil and just gave myself some guidelines as to where exactly my colors would separate, because you'll see in the heart to the left on my phone, every triangle has a different color to it. So that is why we went ahead and did that. So once I finish stamping my whole heart, I'm moving on to a piece of scratch paper, same type of watercolor paper, because I want to see the exact effect that I'm getting, and I want to try 3 different methods, and I left this in there just to give you guys show you guys what I do. So I was debating between the Zig Clean color markers, and then I was also debating between the Distress markers or just using Distress ink to get the effect that I had been envisioning. So I'm testing it out each way to see exactly how I like it. I'm using the Zig Clean Color marker first, and I'm just using a Pentel water brush to spread the color out exactly how I want it. And then after I finish with that, I go ahead and move over to Distress ink. I'm using particularly pinks, purples, and reds just to test out the color, because that is the colors that I'm going for in my heart. And instead of actually drawing in a pencil line where my triangle would be, I thought I would just go ahead and freehand it and see how that turned out. And it turned out okay. But at this point, I'm still really liking the way that the Zig markers are working and the effect that it's giving me. But I thought I'd go ahead and try one last method. But before I do, I'm going to go ahead and heat set that so that it doesn't become a globby mess, because I am not in the least bit a neat crafter. So once I've dried those off, I'm going and erasing the pencil mark from the bottom triangle with the Zig marker to make sure that it comes off and I'm still getting a clean look to it, which I did. I'm going ahead and using some masking tape and taping off a triangle, and I'm going to use some Distress ink and see how I like that. I think had I used a little bit less ink on my applicator, I would have really liked the effect that it gave off, but when I peeled off the masking paper, it was just, there was no shading to it, and that is just totally my fault, because you can get that with the Distress inks. So after all that trial, we went ahead and we're going with the Zig markers, and I sped this up ridiculously fast because it did take me quite a while to go ahead and do. But what I did was I laid down all one color first. You'll see that I do have a couple of the light pinks in there, but then I decided to go ahead and just do one color, go ahead and put that color down, dry it off, then apply the next color and go ahead and use my water brush for that. Again, drying it off in between and then moving on to my last color just so I could see exactly where I was putting down the color so that I didn't have any two colors really touching or up against each other. I'm really liking the look of it, and once I dry it and I use a really good eraser on it, I really love how it turned out. This is exactly what I had been envisioning in my brain the whole time, so that made me really happy. Then I moved on to what would be my sentiment on the card. I'm using this Scripty Love die from Lawn Fawn. I absolutely loved the Scripty dies that they have in all the different sentiments, so I thought I'd go ahead and use that. And I'm just using some mono multi-glue and making a big mess again, hence the scratch paper. And I've cut out about 5 of those love sentiments, and I just went ahead and stacked it with the mono multi-glue. I'm then taking that same black cardstock that I used to die cut the love, and I'm using the Lawn Fawn Love You Tons mini stamp set, and I thought I would go ahead and do some selective inking. So I'm just applying that to my block, and then I'm going to do some white heat embossing on the black cardstock because I really like the look of that. And I'm using some Versamark ink to ink up the just You Tons, so it will read Love You Tons. And I'm stamping that and then using the Ranger super fine white detailed embossing powder because it is my absolute favorite for sentiments. I'm going to go ahead and apply that and then go ahead and heat set that. And you did see at the beginning that I was using the EK Success tool, the powder tool, to make sure that I don't get any stray powder hanging where I don't want it on this black cardstock. So now that I've heat embossed that, I'm going to go ahead and cut off camera, of course, a flag banner shape on either side of the sentiment, which you'll see here. I managed to get that in frame. And then the rest is just about really placing the card and deciding exactly what final touches I wanted to add to this card. I really loved how the geometric heart turned out, and I didn't want to cover it too much with stickles or glitter or sentiment, so I really wanted to just keep it really plain and simple. So I went ahead and used some of I believe this is the GMC silver cord, and I really played with that for a little while because I loved the look of it, but it just wasn't working for me. And looking back now at the completed card, I think I could have just squeezed that in and did without the sequence just like that, just how you see there, but at that exact moment it just wasn't working out for me. So because I had such a tough time deciding and I kept playing with it, I decided I need to just take a break from it all and just start assembling the card. Sometimes you need to just step back and do something else. So the watercolor paper measures 4 1/4. This burgundy cardstock measures 4 1/2 by 4 1/2, and then my card base, the black card base, measures 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. To apply the watercolor cardstock to my actual card, I'm using a ton of foam tape. Now, because I watercolored on this and I have heat set it and everything, the cardstock is a little bit warped, so you want to be generous with whatever adhesive you're using, whether it be snail adhesive, liquid adhesive, or if you're doing foam adhesive, be extra generous because you want every single piece of that to stick down to your card base and not lift up or potentially sink in when you're mailing it. So that was why I went really extra super crazy with the foam tape. So again, I'm fiddling with exactly where the sentiment needs to be placed and what else is going to be done to it, and I decide it's going to stay right in the center, and I mess again with the silver cord, and it's just not working for me. So I'm applying just a little bit of foam tape to the back of the banner because I want to raise that up just a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and use Ranger Multi-Medium Matte medium. I can never remember exactly what it is. I think it's multi-medium matte adhesive because I tend to make a mess and things ooze all over the place. So I figured this dries matte, and so you won't be able to tell that I had to shift it to the right a little bit. So I put that on the card and commit to where I want to put it and put a clear block on top just to give it a little weight while it's drying. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to attaching the banner, and I'm just simply removing the backing of the foam tape, applying it right underneath the love, centering it as best as I can, and then that's all set. The last thing I'm doing with this card is applying some Pretty Pink Posh, the Sparkling Clear 6mm flat sequence. I love these. I think they give a lot of shine, and you'll see that at the very end, but I'm just applying these again with the Multimedia Matte Adhesive because it is matte, and it's what I also had out on my desk at the time. And that completes the card for today. I'm so happy to be back at my desk and crafting. I will be sure to have an updated video as to what's been going on with me. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.